Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Vlogmas Day 18. Today's video is going to be a makeup tutorial for beginners. So this is for someone who either just doesn't feel comfortable wearing makeup, doesn't like to wear makeup, but maybe wants to get into wearing a little bit of makeup. It's going to be a very subtle, like minimal look, and I'm just going to show you how I like to apply makeup for a very minimal look and kind of walk you through some pointers and some steps that I think might be helpful. Wednesday's video will be one about tips to help your makeup look better if you struggle with certain categories. So definitely stay tuned to my channel if you want even more tips that are beginner friendly, but also just for anyone, because those are tips that some of them have been more recent that I've started to do that have really helped me kind of up my makeup game. So definitely stay tuned for that video. But in today, it's going to be like the very, very basics. So I've gone and kind of shopped my own stash and just pulled a few products. So this is what we're going to be using today. And one of these is skincare too. So there's really not a ton of products, and I'm just going to show you a few options for some things. I will link below options for you guys to shop what I'm talking about, just to hopefully make it easier for you guys. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the beginner makeup tutorial. The first thing I want to note about makeup and how to do your makeup is this is just the way that I do it. This is the way that I would show someone else how to do it, but makeup is so subjective. You can really do or don't whatever you want. So just keep that in mind. If something that I do doesn't work out for you, you might have to tweak it a little bit, but I'm trying to share like a very baseline routine that you can build on later to add some things that you might want. So first things first, I think the most important thing is to have a hydrated base on your face. So this is my favorite moisturizer for underneath makeup. This is the Glow Recipe Plum. Oh my gosh, I always struggle saying that. This is the Glow Recipe Plum Plump Hyaluronic Cream. It's a very lightweight moisturizer. It's not too thick in texture, so it leaves a very nice base underneath makeup. Now, this one is a bit of a high-end product, so as far as a drugstore option goes, I would check out the brand Peach Slices from Ulta Beauty. They have really great skincare. I just didn't want to try a whole new moisturizer because I already have one that I really love. I just repurchased the refill of this, so I don't want to, get too many moisturizers that I can't reasonably use up, because this is my daytime one and I have a nighttime one. So this is the one I'm going to be using today, but I would just check out some different drugstore ones or use the one that you're already using. But this one for me is a definite favorite. I will link below one that I feel like might look like a good alternative to this. I probably haven't tried that one, unfortunately, so I'm not gonna know for sure if it's the same as this, but that's the one that I'm gonna be using today. But I find that when you start out with a moisturized base, you're giving your makeup the best bet it can to sit on top of this really well. So whether you do this at the end of your skincare routine or if this is part of your makeup routine, I think either way is fine. It also is a great idea at this point to use your SPF as your primer. I love one from PURITO. It's about $10, so that might be a great alternative to this moisturizer actually, because it has SPF in it, so it's like 2 steps in one. But for today, I'm just kind of focusing on the makeup. So use your SPF like as you usually would in conjunction with the moisturizer, if that's, what you choose to do. Now that I've got the moisturizer on my skin, I feel like my skin is ready for foundation. This is also a great moisturizer that I think would work really well for oily skin or dry skin like I have. If you're new to my channel, just to give you a little bit of backstory on my skin, I've got really, really dry skin. I've got a lot of redness, especially on the left side of my face, but I do have it kind of throughout, especially on my cheeks. So that's kind of my main, two things, is the redness and the dryness. I don't have too many active breakouts. I feel like because my skin is so dry, I don't get them a lot. I don't know, but I've just really never gotten them, I guess genetically. But I do have like the really dry red skin. So I do have a bit of texture on my skin as well. You just can't really see it on camera. It's pretty fine, but sometimes it can get a little bit bumpy. So that's just a little bit about my skin, but I still feel like using a moisturized base is a good idea no matter your skin type, because you don't want to dry your skin out. I did notice that Peach Slices actually has a moisturizer meant for oily skin to help dry your skin out. So I'll definitely link below a few moisturizer options for you to check out, but just know that, I haven't really tried all of them. I've just tried this one. Okay, so moving on to foundation. I've got 2 options to share with you guys today. I've got the Colourpop Pretty Fresh. This is a kind of medium coverage foundation, so it's going to cover up a good bit of whatever's on your skin. So if you have redness like me, sometimes a lightweight foundation isn't ideal because your redness is still going to peek through. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but if that's not the look you're going for, this one might be a good option for you. Or you could try out this one from Wet n Wild. I think both of these are pretty accessible. You can pick up Colourpop from Ulta. You can see the colors that they have in store. They have a lot of options to choose from. So when you're looking at the shades, you'll see mine is called Fair 20N. So the N stands for neutral, and it can kind of help you figure out what area of shades you should be in. So they're likely going to have things like fair, medium, deep. So depending on how you would maybe describe your skin tone, start in that category. Then you can look at the letter that's at the end, and if you find that you have cool undertones, meaning that your skin tends to lean either pink or your veins pop really blue, you might be a more cool undertone. If your veins look a little bit more green when you look at them on your wrist, you might have a more warm undertone, or if your skin is more olivey, you likely have a warm undertone. And then if your skin is neutral, you might have a hard time telling exactly what color your veins are. I tend to lean either cool tone or neutral. I do have a lot of redness on my skin, but the actual like base color of my skin is pretty neutral, and sometimes my veins look more blue than others. So I find that the shade Fair 20N works really well for me. But that might help you kind of pick out your shade. But definitely ask one of the, I think they're called beauty advisors at Ulta, because they can really help you pick your shade. And you can also like put some on your hand or something and then go outside and look at it too. Like let it really dry down and look at it before you commit if you're unsure, because the color can slightly change as it dries. So I would suggest just really trying out maybe a couple of options and see what you think works best. But this other option is usually sold at Walmart and I think like CVS. Like it's pretty available, I would say, from Wet n Wild. However, I don't think they're in Ulta anymore. So you can't find this at Ulta, but I think you can find it at most other drugstores. So this is the Wet n Wild PhotoFocus foundation. Now I have mine in the dewy version. So what I would suggest here is just what do you think you might want, first of all, and also what's your skin type. So if you have dry skin, I would point you towards the dewy option. And if you have oily skin, I would point you towards the matte option. They're the same foundation, but one has a dewy finish and one has a matte finish. And I have mine in the shade Nude Ivory. I find on this one it has pretty good shades as well, but you can just kind of look on the side here and see what you think might work for you. Another great option with finding your foundations is to pull up the product photo from their website and look for one of their models wearing the foundation that might have a similar skin tone to you. It can at least point you in the right direction. I use that function all of the time and just pull up their own models and kind of see what color foundation they're wearing. But for today, I'm actually going to use this one from Wet n Wild. In Wednesday's video, I will use the Colourpop Pretty Fresh so you guys can see that on my skin, but I'm going to use this one from Wet n Wild today. I'm going for a very like lightweight coverage option, so you're going to see a little bit of the redness kind of peek through my skin. I will say that with this foundation in particular, I find that you really do need to blend it out with a sponge. If I use a brush, sometimes it's a bit hit or miss, so for me, a sponge works a lot better with the foundation. So I'm just adding a little bit to the cheeks and I'm gonna leave it at this. So it's not like a ton of product. They're pretty light layers here where I've added them. And then I want to use a damp sponge. So this sponge I have right now is from the in-house Sephora brand, but my favorite one is from Shop Miss A and it's $1.55. So I will link both the Sephora one if you're needing one like in a pinch that you want to go pick up now, and I'll leave the Shop Miss A one if you have time, you can order it. I love to order the 6-pack of the Shop Miss A sponges for about $8 or $9. But individually they're only $1.55, whereas I think this one retails for about $10. So I actually took a video that I'm going to insert here of how I dampen my sponges, because this is something that when I first started using a sponge, I didn't know how to do. So I usually turn the hot water on because it takes a minute to warm up, and I know that by the time it gets kind of hot, I've probably run it under there enough, but our water was actually already hot, so I added some cold water and I just put the sponge underneath the water and I just continue squeezing the sponge, kind of squeeze it and then let it get more water into it and just kind of over and over again, squeeze the sponge. This process takes me about 20 seconds, I would say, because I really want it to get damp. And then at the end, I will really squeeze it out and see how it's feeling. I might add a little bit more water at that point. I just want it to be very, evenly damp. I don't want it to feel like hard at any point, because when you dampen it, it makes it really, really spongy. So then I turn the water off and I completely squeeze out the sponge like 2 or 3 times, and then it's ready to go. So I will just dry my hand off, grab the sponge, and then come back and complete my makeup or work on my makeup. So I really like that method of dampening my sponge. I wanted to share that because I didn't know how to do that when I first started using a sponge. So I wanted to share that. So then with your damp sponge, you just kind of pat all of the foundation all over your face. So you just kind of keep bouncing it. You're not using a lot of pressure, like I'm not beating myself in the face or anything. You just want to lightly kind of press the sponge all over your face. Make sure that you pull your foundation a little bit down your neck. This is especially crucial if your foundation doesn't really match your skin tone very well. But here you can see it does have a good amount of coverage. Like it is covering up my redness. This one is a bit of a light to medium coverage foundation. So it's going to cover up a little bit, but it's still going to let some show. And I like to just start by applying it on the cheeks like we did. And then I can blend it out the rest of the way with my sponge. So I start to go over the chin. I want to make sure I go around the nose really, really well. That's where my foundation tends to break apart first. So I want to make sure that I press the foundation in really nicely around the nose area. And then I want to just bring a little bit on the forehead. I find that when I bring too much on the forehead, it starts to crease. So I tend to just kind of pull the product up to the forehead with my sponge. I don't really add usually any extra product. If I do, I'll show you. I might just do like the smallest little dot right here in the middle. That might look like a lot, but it's a really, really thin layer. And then you could pull this down onto the nose and blend it onto the forehead. But the sponge will soak up a little bit of your foundation, but I find that it helps blend it so much easier than a brush does, or I don't like to use my fingers. I just never have liked that. And I'm also going to go ahead and just pull this over the eye. I'm going to put on the under eye and everything. So I really want to evenly blend this out. And definitely start with less. You can always add more, but if you add too much right away, it can be a little bit difficult to deal with. So right now, I've got it pretty evenly spread out. I'll bring you guys a little bit closer. So here is a kind of close-up look of how my face is looking, just with kind of one light layer of the foundation. And what I'm seeing is that I still have, a good bit of redness, especially right here on my cheeks, like right underneath my eyes. So I want to add just a little bit more foundation. I am going to add concealer too, so I don't need to cover it up 100%, but I'm just going to kind of put a little bit more right on the areas that seem more red to me, but I'm really okay with the redness peeking through right there. I really want this to be like a nice everyday sort of a look. So again, I'm just going to blend this out with my sponge. If you find that your makeup and your foundation in particular looks like it's separating, like with little dots on it, it might mean that your sponge is too damp, or it could be having a poor reaction with whatever is underneath it, whatever moisturizer you decided to use. So if you have different options, I would try that out, but definitely make sure you're really wringing out your sponge. If I were to sit here and squeeze this sponge, there's not a drop of water that would come out of it. I have really wrung out all of the loose water, so to speak. So that's really just to give you guys an idea of how this should be feeling right now. So I'm happy with how the foundation looks now. I just added that tiny bit more, but I don't feel like it looks cakey. I didn't add too much. And I only actually dipped into this one time. I just set this aside and that's when I added more. I never dipped back into the bottle, and that will also help you not apply too much. If you have a pump bottle like the Colourpop one, don't feel like you have to use a whole pump. Just use like the tiniest bit on your finger and then you can apply it to your face that way. I will also share tips on that on Wednesday. But now that we have foundation on, I want to add some concealer. So concealer is really similar to foundation, but it has a thicker consistency usually, so it's more targeted and more pigmented. It's going to help cover up things on your face easier than a foundation, because the foundation is meant to go all over your face, whereas the concealer is really meant to pinpoint areas where you might have you know, purple on the under eyes, or you might have redness or an active blemish or something like that. If you do have an active blemish, I would suggest applying the concealer to your finger and then dotting your finger over the blemish. That way you're not using the wand from your concealer and putting it on an active blemish or pimple and then putting that back into the product, because these products take a very long time to use up, at least several months, even if it's the only one that you're using. So I would not suggest like placing this just directly onto, you know, an active blemish. I usually put it on my finger first and go that route. So I'm just applying some of this into this area underneath my eyes and towards the inner corner. And I'm going to be able to blend this out. A lot of people do concealer different ways. Some people do like a single dot right here and some on the under eye, like on the outer portion. But I find that pretty much wherever you're gonna put it, it will be able to get blended. So I'm not really too worried about exactly where it's going. But again, with that sponge, and this one from Sephora is really nice with this flat edge, because you can get really nicely into the under eye area. Definitely be very gentle on the under eye area because it's a very sensitive part of your face, but I just am blending this everywhere. So I'm starting with where I've laid the product down and kind of working my way around the eye. If I pull it up onto the eyelid, this is also going to cancel out my veins. So you can see here, you can see my veins on my eyelid, but then now you really can't. And that's exactly what I want. We're not going to use any eyeshadow today because I feel like that's kind of like the next step once you do like your very easy everyday, you know, sort of a makeup look here. I tend to wear eyeshadow every day, but I also love to spend time on my makeup, and I have for, I mean, at least a decade now. So that's something that I typically do every day. But as far as like just the basics go, I feel like we can definitely do without eyeshadow. But if you guys want a beginner tutorial on eyeshadow, because I know blending can be a bit nerve-wracking sometimes, let me know. I can go buy a very affordable eyeshadow palette to show you guys with, so that hopefully you guys could use the same one. I know Wet n Wild has some like 8-pan eyeshadow palettes for just a few dollars. So I'm definitely willing to do that if you guys think that would help you out, because I know it took me a while to figure out the blending of eyeshadow. So hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing here on the concealer. I'm just really blending it out. If you have anything, like I have this little red mark, it's not a pimple, it's just like my skin is a little bit irritated there. So I'm gonna add some. And another option, you can just add it like right next to the actual, you know, blemish or whatever, if you do have an active blemish, and then just blend it on top, like kind of move the product around with your sponge if you don't want to apply it to your finger first. But this is a very like, you know, simple sort of a concealer. I use the one that I think is the most accessible and the most affordable. This is the Neutrogena Radiant Cream Concealer. I don't find that the shade range on this one is the best, but it was the best option that I had to use in today's video. So mine is the lightest shade, I believe. It's Ivory Light 1, and it works pretty well for me, but their shade range is a bit odd. Okay, so now that I've got that blended out, I feel pretty comfortable with how it's looking. It's not totally full coverage, so I will show you guys actually that you can build up your concealer as well. Again, I just suggest starting with the lighter layers. So I'm just gonna add a tiny bit here to build coverage because I do have a lot of blueness on the under eyes. And I'm just going to pat that in with the sponge again. But this time I'm not going to blend it everywhere. I'm going to keep it really just right in the area where I needed it the most. And again, just be very, very gentle with this sponge. I'm barely using any pressure at all. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's good to me. And I'm going to leave like the base looking this way. So now it's time for powder. So now I've got these cream products on my face and they do set down usually pretty well, but especially on the eye area and around the nose, I find that my makeup will break apart or it can crease if I don't set it down with powder. And that just means that the product is going to collect in the natural creases of your skin. So it's going to look like there's just a line of concealer sitting either in the crease of my eye, which is right here, or underneath the eye in those creases that I just naturally have. So my favorite powder, it just happens to be drugstore. This is the CoverGirl Clean Fresh powder. I think this is an amazing pressed powder. I need to pick up another one clearly, but it's a great powder. I really suggest it. I suggest this for dry or oily skin. If you have oily skin, I would keep this in your handbag or your purse, whatever. And it comes with a little puff too. So you can actually just use this puff. So I'm going to use that today in case you guys don't have like a ton of brushes. You could just pick the product up with your puff there. and then press it underneath your eye. I'm kind of bending the actual puff itself to reach here in this inner corner. Now, I much prefer to use a brush with powder, you know, just to be honest, but if you don't have one, this comes with the product, so, you know, you might as well use it. So see here, this line I have on my eye, that's called the crease of your eye. It's where your eye naturally creases. So of course the concealer is going to pile up into that area. To fix that, just use your sponge and kind of blend it out. I'm kind of pushing and pulling, but slightly, like barely. And I'm just going to kind of tap out the concealer there. And you can achieve this just by tapping as well, but I tend to kind of tap and pull just a little bit, like kind of roll it, but make sure not to pull your eyelids. So then with the same powder, I'm just going to powder on the lid as well. So I'm trying not to get it too much into the eyebrow, but I did just get it into there a little bit. And I'm just pressing this lightly all over the eye area. And I'm also going to press this by the nose. So that's how I would use the puff. And then I'll show you a brush on the other side in case you do have brushes. So I'm just going to pick the product up with my brush. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing, just kind of pressing this on the eye area, pressing it on the lid as well, and then right down by the nose. I'm also going to press the powder on the tip of my nose as well, just because my nose tends to be the first place where it breaks up. So you can see here that actually with the powder puff, I got a bit more coverage out of this powder than I did with the brush. So just depending on what you're going for, like sometimes I do use the powder puff. You can see that mine is dirty because I've used it. That's not just from today, but I tend to like a brush just because I find them, you know, a little bit more comfortable to use, especially getting in that inner corner area. Now, if you have oily skin, I would suggest powdering your whole face at this point, just because I feel like throughout the day, the powder can really help not have such oily skin if that's not what you're wanting. And then you can also just use the powder puff for that as well. Just press it all over your skin. I guess you could probably like lightly rub it, but I would really suggest trying to pat it into your skin. I feel like you'll have better luck with that, but I have really dry skin, so I don't want to put powder all over my face. Okay, next up is going to be bronzer, which is kind of optional, and then blush. I think blush would be my #1 pick if I could only pick one cheek product, and I'm actually using this out of a duo because this retails for about $3 from Walmart, and I wanted to point it out because Revolution has face palettes that have a bronzer in them as well. So I would suggest picking up one of these. I found the formula of this to be really, really nice, and I would pick this up. Then if you want to ever try highlight, you can, but you would at least have the bronzer and the blush in there. And I think for about $5, they have the 3-pack, which is really great. Now, it might be called a contour versus a bronzer, but either way, I think that what we're gonna do today, you could do with either a contour or a bronzer. So a bronzer is gonna be more warm tone. It's gonna give you more of that tan look to your skin, like you've been at the beach. Whereas a contour is supposed to give you like shadows, but from what I remember, the ones I saw in store looked a little bit more like this product from e.l.f. This is a great one. This is the Primer Infused bronzer in the shade Forever Sunkissed. This is a very neutral tone, like bronzer / contour, I would consider this to be. It's not too warm. It's not going to make me look orange. So I think this is a really great one to use. But I really want the bronzer for the eyes. So first I'm going to show you just with the blush so you guys could see what it would look like if you don't want to pick up a bronzer. So we're just going to do the blush first. And like I said, I'm using the one from this duo. I've got mine in the shade Sweet. So if you look on the back right here, it will say Sweet, but they've got a ton of different options. And I was really excited to see all those at Walmart. They probably sell them at Target too though, because I know they're selling Revolution there now as well. So for blush, I'm just using this on a very fluffy brush, picking the product up, and then if I could show you guys, picking the product up. You can also tap the brush off. This is not a very pigmented blush, which is great for just starting out, but I want to start it here like on the very highest point of my cheekbone and then pull it towards my hairline. That's going to help me put most of the pigment back some, so it's not going to be like right in the center of my face like clown cheeks or anything like that. We'll do the same thing on the other side so you guys can hopefully see. Again, I'm just kind of blending in circular motions. I can kind of pat some of the product down. It just depends on what feels more comfortable to you. And I want to pull this from the top highest point of my cheekbone up towards the temple and the hairline. Then I want to add a little bit here to the fronts of the cheek, and I really like to pull blush over the nose. I find that that looks the most natural. You might can tell that I have freckles on my nose, and that's because when the sun hits my face, I get sun right there. So I think it looks the most natural to pull my blush there, but that's definitely optional if you don't want the blush to be there. So this is really like where I would leave the cheeks for like an everyday sort of a look, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can use bronzer on the face just because I want to show you the bronzer on the eyes. So for this, I'm going to use this one from e.l.f. that I mentioned, the Primer Infused bronzer. And this you want to apply like kind of underneath where you would apply the blush. And it's just going to help kind of sculpt the cheek and help it look like, okay, this is what I'm trying to lift up here. And also this is where you would apply a contour as well. Contour and bronzer can be a bit confusing, but I'm just using them kind of interchangeably right now because I think for a beginner, just kind of using that sort of a product as one, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I also bring this up onto the forehead. I find that it kind of helps the face look a little bit more cohesive, but I have not added any more product. I like to use a bit of a lighter hand on the forehead with this. So I'm just kind of applying this here all the way up and back down underneath this cheek. Sometimes I'll apply it here underneath the chin. You can do that if you feel like you like the look of that, but I kind of go back and forth as to whether or not I like that look or not. So I'm going to leave it as this for now. I'm just applying kind of a little bit, and I really think you could sort of apply this and then put your blush right on top and it would look good, but I think you could go without the bronzer, especially when you're just starting out. I don't think it's necessary. So I want to show you though how you can use the bronzer in the eye look. I need to wash my brushes, so this one is like mostly clean, but with an eyeshadow brush, I'm just going to pick up the bronzer. This is just to show you that you don't need an eyeshadow palette. If you were to pick up that Revolution product that had all three, I think you would be good to go. But what I want to do is start right here on the outer portion of my eye. So like right where my eyelashes end, I want to put the brush there, and then I want to blend it back and forth into the crease, which is, remember this line right here, that's just natural. My eyes are a bit hooded, so if your eyes are not hooded, that's going to be just like wherever your eye socket is, it's going to be right there, like right above where, you know, your eye stops. Your brush should pretty naturally fit into that area right above your eye. That's where I'm wanting to put this. I'm just going to do like windshield wiper motions back and forth, and I'm going to put it right in that area. So once I put most of the bronzer there, now you can start kind of just blending right above it. There's really nothing on the brush now. I'm just blending what's there, and I want to kind of put this everywhere. You can't really be too messy with this. It's very natural looking because it is a bronzer. Another great option for the cheek products I'll mention now, I'll have this linked, is from Ulta Beauty. This is the 3-in-1 cheek palette, and so it comes with a bronzer, a blush, and a highlight. So I think this is another great option alternatively to the Revolution one. So I will also link this below. You can find Ulta on sale a lot, so full price it's more than the Revolution one, but you can pretty much always find them on sale. So I'm dipping back into the bronzer. I find that tapping off the brush is extremely helpful for starting lighter. It gets some of the pigment out of your brush, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. And I'm not going to speed this up so you guys can really see what I'm doing. So I'm just putting this into the eye socket again. Windshield wiper motions just back and forth, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the eyes. You want to be very gentle with the eyes because they're sensitive and your skin around them is very thin and sensitive as well. So you don't want to be too rough. You can also like probably cause some wrinkles if you start just like really hammering in with your brush. So I don't like to do that. I'm picking up a little bit more, tapping the brush off again. So tapping it off, some of the powder is going to come out of the brush, which is just getting rid of essentially like a third to half of the product. So it's not going to be as dark right away. And I'm adding this here to that outer portion again, right where my eyelashes end. And then I'm going into that crease area again. So now that all the product is mostly there, I'm going to again start to blend it up. Again, windshield wiper motions just up towards the brow, onto the lid as well. So right here, and I'm just going to kind of blend it everywhere. Now what I find to be extremely helpful at this point is to pull it right here as well. I'm not adding anything else to the brush, but I find that blending this right here will help any creasing. My eyes tend to crease. I don't know if you guys can see the concealer sitting there in those creases, but throughout time over the day, that will become more noticeable. So I add this bronzer or eyeshadow if you're using eyeshadow to this area because it really conceals that, and I feel like you don't notice it throughout the day at all. So that's all I would do for the eye area. That's why I wanted to point out the bronzer, but I definitely think you could do that with your blush too if you want it to be a little bit more pink toned, but I find this to be more neutral and kind of wearable if you're not used to seeing colors on your eyes. Okay, we're almost done. So next up, let's talk about brows. Now, this is the best brow product I think for beginners. This is the e.l.f. Wow Brow, and I've got mine in the shade Brunette. So it's a tinted brow gel that has little fibers in it, and it's going to help you fill in your brows. So if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I tend to do the same brow routine, but I repurchased this to show you guys today, but I've used up 2 or 3 of these before. So I haven't even brushed through my brows. I'm going to do it all with this product. So I'm going to start not quite at the beginning, but a little bit farther back. I'm just going to start lightly brushing through with the direction that my brow hairs grow. I want them to go kind of up and towards the temple area of my head. Then when I get to this arch here where it kind of starts to go down, I will go with how they're growing, and then I'll pull down because I want them to kind of tilt down. Then when I have hopefully less product, I did a little bit too much here, but hopefully when you have less product, you can kind of start in the front of the brows and just keep on brushing through them because you see that big clump I just put in there will get dispersed and spread out, so it won't be so bad. Then when you get happy with how it's looking, at the top of the brow, you can just run the product like that just to kind of flatten it out some if you want to. And then with my finger, I will just kind of wipe away that little dot that got there. So this to me is the easiest way to go with like an everyday sort of a brow look. Now, I tend to like to pull my brows in a little bit with a pencil. Stay tuned to Wednesday's video because I'm going to show you my typical brow routine, but it's definitely more involved than this. If you have light brow hairs, getting a product that looks like you want your brows to look, maybe match it to your hair instead of your brows, that can help. This is actually a little bit darker than my brows, but I like the way that it looks, so I got the shade Brunette because of that. But if you don't have eyebrows, like if you have a lot of sparse areas, then maybe try this if you do have some brow hairs, and then stay tuned for Wednesday's video because I'll show you how I create, you know, brow-like hairs in the brows with other products. So I'm just kind of brushing through this one. This time I started in the very beginning, but I tend to start like right here if I'm really thinking about it. But it's a really simple product to use. And if you get it on your skin like I just did, you know, you just wipe it off. So it's really, really, really foolproof in my opinion. But just use a light hand. You don't want to really dig in there or it will just take you a little bit longer to get them the way you want them. So this is also doing a lot of things. It's brushing through the brows, so it's shaping them, which is nice. It's also going to set them into place because it is a brow gel. I find the hold on this is pretty nice. It's going to hold them most of the day. And then it also is giving you some color. It's giving you some fiber, so it's making them look more full. And I really like this brow product. This for me does everything except for fill in the front part, which I just don't have any brow hairs right there. But I think that this is the most natural way to fill in your brows and the easiest way for beginners especially. Okay, I was going to leave my brows like this, but if you're like me and you're like, oh, that's not enough, Kirsten, let me show you how to fill in the front part, and then you'll see my more in-depth like everyday brow routine on Wednesday. I think that this product is going to be your best bet. This is the NYX Lift and Snatch Brow Tint Pen. It's like a brow marker, and this one might take some getting used to. Hold it pretty much at the end of the product and use a very light hand. I also find that holding the mirror out a little bit farther versus like right here helps me get the best overall look. And then I just start with the first one of like where I want it to be with a very light hand. I start from the bottom and go up as if it's a brow hair. And I want to start the brows like right here. So now I know where I want them to start. Then I can just start adding little hair-like strokes right in between that line and where my brow actually starts. You can also kind of pat this out if you find it's too pigmented, but it's a pretty simple product to use once you get the hang of it. But if you've never used anything like this before, just give it a little bit of time, but it's usually pretty quick to just fill in the brows right there. I just really don't like my brows starting so far back. I like to add this part in the front. For me, I really want to do my makeup and not fill in that front part, so that's why I'm showing you guys today, but I will show that in more detail on Wednesday. So for mascara, I went ahead and did the left side, but the one I've been really liking lately from the drugstore is the Maybelline, the Falsies Lash Lift Mascara. And I think that for beginners, if you're not used to wearing mascara, let's just start with like one good coat of mascara. So starting with the wand, look down when you do this. It might help not get it on your eyelid, but try to just wiggle the wand from the root of the brow to the tip of the brow. And you can kind of do that over and over again, trying to coat all of the lashes. So that would be considered like one coat of mascara when you feel like you've covered all of those lashes. So I'm going to leave it at that. A lot of people also don't like lower lash mascara. So here's the difference so that you guys can see. I also did not curl my lashes for this. I just think like starting out, just put the mascara on and see how you feel about it. So this is without mascara on the lower lash line, of course, and this is how it looks with it. I feel like I don't even look like myself if I don't have on lower lash mascara, because I've been doing that since I was like 15, so I'm used to seeing that on myself, and I like the way that my eyes look with it on. So I'm going to add some, and you do the same thing. Just wiggle it from root to tip, which of course this time you're going, you know, the opposite direction, moving your wand down there, and it really just needs a tiny little bit on the lower lash line. I'm not spending as long on the lower lashes as I am the upper lashes. You can also always add more to the upper lashes if you want to, but I find that this is perfect for just every day. Okay, then lastly would be for lips. Now I do have on a lip product right now, which is just like a chapstick type of a product. This is called the Lip Glossy from Kopari. I got this from TJ Maxx a long time ago, but I usually try to put this on as I'm getting ready just to moisturize the lips. But then I would just pick a lip gloss. Now, the one that I have that's affordable in my collection is the Essence Extreme Care lip gloss. This one's in the shade Milky Cocoa, but it's a very cool toned lip gloss. So if you're looking for just like an everyday lip gloss, I would maybe look in this line, but pick up a shade that's more similar to this. This is the Buxom lip gloss in the shade Dolly. So I would just pick up this line of lip gloss. I really like this one from Essence, but maybe pick up a different shade that looks a little bit more natural to your lips. I'm going to use this Buxom one today, but I wanted to mention the Essence since it is more affordable. But I would just apply a lip gloss and call it a day. I think for beginners, a lip gloss is the way to go. Either a lip gloss or even a chapstick if you don't like lip products, because throwing on all of your makeup and then adding a lipstick, sometimes it feels like too much. I know sometimes you're not used to that feeling of lipstick on your lips, so I would just start out with a gloss. And I don't think that you really need a setting spray. If you want to use a setting spray, I would suggest this one from e.l.f. if you find that your makeup looks a little bit too powdery, or if you find that you just like want a setting spray, if you've heard people are using that or whatever and you've seen them, you know, or if you're just wanting to try one, I would suggest trying this one out. This is the e.l.f. Dewy Coconut Setting Mist, but I really don't feel like, especially for beginners, that you need it. And if I could pick between primer and setting spray, I would really suggest either a primer or a nice moisturizer like we talked about earlier. So this would be the finished result of like my idea of like beginner makeup. So it's very simple, everyday, and easy to achieve in my opinion. So I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. If you are a beginner to makeup, let me know down below what else would be helpful for you guys to see. I definitely feel like an eyeshadow tutorial, but give me specifics, like what are you looking for? Also, if you want like a specific tutorial on a look that you've seen online that you can't achieve, that you've been working towards, shoot it to me in my DMs. I always have my Instagram link down below in my description, so you can always DM me on Instagram and just say like, I would love to see you create this look. I can't figure out how to do X, Y, or Z. Just let me know. I would love to film videos that are helpful for you guys, so I'm definitely open to any suggestions or requests that you guys have. But that's going to be it for today's video. Again, definitely stay tuned for Wednesday, as I will be sharing tips for if something you're doing doesn't seem to be working on your skin. Some of those tips might be able to help you. So I hope that Wednesday's video will also help you guys out. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Also be sure to be subscribed to my channel. And if you turn on the post notification bell, you will be notified every single time that I post, which in the month of December is every day for Vlogmas. So I hope you guys are enjoying that. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.